go. Let's go. Let's get this shit.
Wildcat walked out of the wilderness. It didn't follow a human home. It wasn't captured, it wasn't trained, it wasn't bred into submission. It just appeared at the edges of a human settlement one day and never left. Most people assume cats were domesticated the same way every other animal was. Gradually, deliberately, by humans who saw a use for them and forced the relationship into existence. That's not what happened. What actually happened is the strangest origin story in the history of the animal kingdom. A small predator that engineered its own survival by making itself indispensable to the most powerful species on the planet, and then spent 10,000 years quietly rewriting its own biology to make sure we could never let it go. It is 10,000 BCE, the Fertile Crescent. The region covering modern Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt is witnessing something that has never happened before in human history. People are farming. For the first time, humans are staying in one place, cultivating grain and storing the surplus. This single development changed everything about human civilization. It also created an entirely new problem. Grain stores are essentially a buffet for rodents. Mice and rats flooded into early human settlements in numbers nobody had ever dealt with before. They didn't just eat the food, they contaminated it. They destroyed it. A serious infestation could wipe out an entire community's food supply before winter. The humans had no solution. But something living at the edge of the wilderness did. Felis silvestris libica, the Near Eastern wildcat, was a small, aggressive, solitary predator living in the same region. It was not friendly. It was not approachable. It looked similar to a modern tabby, but behaved nothing like one. And it was extraordinarily good at killing rodents. Wildcats living near early farming settlements discovered that human grain stores attracted rats, and rats were easier to hunt than anything in the open wilderness. Less dangerous, more concentrated, essentially guaranteed. The cats that were bold enough, or hungry enough, to hunt close to human camps had a significant survival advantage over every cat that stayed in the wild. Those cats survived longer, reproduced more. Their offspring inherited the same slightly reduced fear of humans. Generation by generation, the cats that tolerated human proximity thrived. The ones that didn't. Nobody tamed them. Nobody selectively bred them. The cats self-selected for the one trait that mattered most, the ability to exist near humans without fleeing. Scientists cracked open the DNA of cat populations across 3 continents. Wild ones, domestic ones, ancient ones. They expected to find multiple origin points scattered across different regions. They found one. Every single domestic cat alive today traces back to one specific wildcat population. One place, one time, the Fertile Crescent 10,000 years ago. The cats came to us, not the other way around. In 2004, archaeologist Jean-Denis Vigne discovered the oldest known evidence of a deliberate cat-human relationship on the island of Cyprus. A grave dating back 9,500 years containing a human skeleton buried alongside a cat. Not a wild cat killed for fur. A cat deliberately interred with a person, positioned facing the same direction, separated by only 40 centimeters. Someone, 9,500 years ago, loved their cat enough to bury it beside them. The relationship had already moved far beyond utility, but it was in ancient Egypt where the cat's status transformed completely. By 1,500 BCE, cats had stopped being workers. They had become something no other animal in human history has ever managed to become, objects of worship. And the reason started practically, the way most things in history do. Egyptian homes faced threats that went far beyond rodents. Cobras lived in the walls. Scorpions hid in sandals left by the door. Both were capable of killing a child within hours of a single strike. Cats hunted both. A cat in the home was not just a convenience. It was the difference between your family surviving the night and not waking up at all. So Egyptians stopped seeing cats as useful animals. They started seeing them as protectors, then as sacred, then as divine. The goddess Bastet, depicted as a cat or a woman with a cat's head, represented the protection of the home, fertility, and the safety of children. She was one of the most widely worshipped figures in the entire Egyptian world, and the cats themselves inherited every bit of that status. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt was a capital offense, punishable by death, not a fine, not exile, death. When a family cat died of natural causes, the household entered formal mourning. Family members shaved off their eyebrows, a ritual reserved for profound personal loss. The cats were mummified, wrapped carefully, and buried with small clay jars of milk as grave goods for the afterlife. Archaeologists have uncovered entire cat cemeteries containing hundreds of thousands of mummified cats at sites including Beni Hassan and Bubastis, offerings to Bastet, or simply beloved animals given the same burial care as the humans who had loved them. The wild cat that had wandered into a grain store had talked its way into a religion. Then it left Egypt entirely. Researchers tracked cat DNA preserved in bones at archaeological sites spanning 9,000 years of human history. What they confirmed changed how scientists understood the global spread of domesticated animals. Cats didn't conquer the world once. They did it twice. The first wave moved with early farmers spreading out of the Fertile Crescent, working cats moving wherever agriculture moved. The second wave came directly from Egypt. High-status cats, descendants of sacred animals, traveling along maritime trade routes throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. The DNA trail eventually led somewhere nobody expected. Egyptian cat lineages showed up at Viking settlements in the Baltic Sea. 7th century CE, Viking longships carried cats, not as companions, as essential maritime equipment. Ships carried grain on long voyages. Grain attracted rats. Rats destroyed food supplies and chewed through the ropes, holding the rigging together. A ship without a working cat was a serious liability on open water. The same animal that had wandered into a Neolithic grain store 10,000 years earlier had now crossed oceans on the longships of Vikings. But the most remarkable part of this story isn't historical, it's biological. As cats spent more generations alongside humans, their bodies quietly changed. Not because humans were breeding them toward a goal, but because the cats that survived longest were the ones that adapted most precisely to human psychology. Geneticists compared domestic cat DNA to wild cat DNA and found specific changes in regions linked to fear response, aggression, and the ability to form positive associations with other species. The domestic cat's brain physically changed over thousands of years. The areas governing fear and aggression reduced in both size and reactivity. The blotched tabby pattern common in modern cats was almost entirely absent in ancient ones. It emerged and spread in the Middle Ages, not because it helped cats survive, but because humans found it appealing and kept those specific cats around longer. The cats that looked the way we wanted them to look outlived the ones that didn't. And then there is the meow. Adult wild cats do not meow at each other. Meowing is a vocalization kittens use to communicate distress to their mothers. In the wild, adult cats abandon it completely. They have no use for it. Domestic cats never stopped. Researchers discovered that embedded inside the domestic cat's meow is a high-frequency cry, sitting precisely within the same frequency range as a human infant in distress. That specific sound is the one the human brain is most neurologically primed to respond to immediately before conscious thought can intervene. People consistently rated this cry as more urgent and harder to ignore than any regular cat vocalization, even when they had no idea what they were actually hearing. The cat reverse engineered the one sound the human brain cannot tune out, and it did it without anyone teaching it to. No other animal in human history has done what the cat did. Dogs were shaped by humans over thousands of years of deliberate breeding. Horses were broken and trained into submission. Every other domesticated species gave up something fundamental: freedom, instinct, independence, in exchange for survival alongside us. The cat gave up almost nothing. It kept its hunting ability, its territorial instinct, its refusal to follow commands. The domestic cat genome remains closer to its wild ancestor than that of almost any other domesticated animal on Earth. What it surrendered was the bare minimum: a slight reduction in fear, a handful of coat pattern variations, a repurposed vocalization, and in exchange it received shelter, guaranteed food, protection, and the devoted worship of an entire civilization. It walked out of the wilderness 10,000 years ago with nothing but the ability to kill rodents, and a tolerance for human proximity, and it turned that into godhood. You're walking through tall grass 100,000 years ago. The sun is setting. You hear something move behind you. You turn around and see two yellow eyes reflecting the last bit of daylight. A cave lion, twice the size of any lion alive today. 700 pounds of muscle, claws, and teeth, and it's looking directly at you. You have no gun, no knife, not even a sharp stick. Your teeth are flat. Your nails are useless. You can't outrun it. You can't outclimb it. You can't fight it. So how are you still here? How did your ancestors survive when everything on Earth was built to kill them? Let's start with what was actually hunting us. In 1924, Raymond Dart discovered a skull in South Africa that changed everything. It belonged to a child, an early human ancestor about 3 years old, and punctured through the eye sockets were 2 holes perfectly spaced to match the canine teeth of a leopard. This child was prey, not a tragic accident. Prey. For millions of years, humans weren't hunters. We were hunted, and the predators we faced weren't just dangerous. They were apex killers that had spent millions of years evolving to hunt large mammals, starting with the saber-toothed cat, Smilodon fatalis, 11-inch canines, 600 pounds, built like a tank with a bite designed to puncture the throats of bison and camels. It didn't chase, it ambushed. It waded in tall grass or near water sources and exploded out at 30 miles per hour. One bite to the neck and you were done. And it wasn't alone. The short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, the largest mammalian land predator in North America. 12 feet tall when standing, 2,000 pounds. Long legs built for endurance running. Most bears today are opportunistic. They'll eat berries, fish, whatever. The short-faced bear was a hypercarnivore. It ate meat. Only meat, and it could run 40 miles per hour. If it saw you, you were already dead. Then there were the cave hyenas, Crocuta spelaea, larger and stronger than modern hyenas with a bite force of 1,100 pounds per square inch. For context, your bite is about 162 pounds per square inch. A cave hyena could crush bones to get at the marrow inside. They hunted in packs of 20 or more, coordinated, relentless, and they hunted at night when early humans could barely see. Dire wolves ran in packs of 30. Cave lions were 25% larger than African lions and hunted in groups. Giant cheetahs, scimitar cats, terror birds in South America that stood 10 feet tall with beaks that could shatter skulls. Everywhere humans went, something was trying to eat us. And here's the thing, we had nothing. A chimpanzee, our closest relative, is 3 times stronger than an adult human. Chimps have fangs, they can climb 30 feet in seconds, and they still get killed by leopards regularly. We were slower than chimps, weaker than chimps. We couldn't see well in the dark, we couldn't smell predators from a distance. Our hearing was mediocre, we were upright, which made us visible from far away, and our baby screamed constantly and couldn't even walk for a year. By every biological measure, we should have been extinct in 100,000 years, but we're not. They are. Every single predator I just listed is gone, and we're here. So what happened? The first weapon was fire. In Wonderwork Cave, South Africa, archaeologists found evidence of controlled fire dating back 1 million years. Burned bones, ash layers, hearths, and fire changed everything. A campfire creates a safety zone roughly 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, predators will not enter. It's hardwired into them. Even today, lions in Africa avoid fire. It gave us light when we couldn't see. It gave us warmth in climates our hairless bodies weren't built for, but most importantly, it gave us time. Before fire, when the sun set, you found shelter and stayed completely still until morning. After fire, you had 3 to 4 extra hours every night. Time to make tools, time to plant, time to talk. And fire did one more thing. It let us cook. Cooked meat has more calories and is easier to digest. More calories meant we could afford to grow bigger brains, and bigger brains meant better problem solving. But fire alone didn't save us. The second weapon was endurance. We're terrible sprinters. A saber-tooth could hit 30 miles per hour in 3 seconds. We top out at 28 and only for a short distance. But here's what no other predator could do. Run for hours. We have something called persistence hunting. You don't chase an animal at full speed, you track it at a jog, just fast enough to keep it moving. You follow it for 3, 4, 6 hours. The animal runs, stops, overheats, runs again. It can't sweat like we can. It can't cool down while moving. Eventually, it collapses from heat stroke, and you walk up and kill it with a rock. Humans are the only species on Earth that can do this.
This endurance is what drove our hunt and secured our survival.
The third weapon was pattern recognition. Human brains evolved to see patterns everywhere. Broken twigs means something walked here. Disturbed dirt means something dug here. The shape of tracks tells you what animal, how big, how long ago. We started tracking predators the same way we tracked prey. We learned their schedules. Saber-tooths hunt near water at dusk. Cave lions avoid fire. Short-faced bears are solitary and territorial. We observed, we remembered, we taught each other. And every generation that knowledge compounded. But the real weapon, the one that actually saved us, was each other. In 2001, archaeologists found a skeleton in Dmanisi, Georgia, dating back 1.8 million years. It belonged to an old human ancestor who had lost all their teeth years before they died. No teeth means you can't chew meat, can't process raw food. This person survived for years after losing their teeth. Someone was feeding them, chewing food for them, or cooking it soft enough to eat. No predator does this. A lion with no teeth dies. A human with no teeth gets taken care of. In Shanidar Cave, Iraq, researchers found a Neanderthal skeleton from 60,000 years ago. He had a healed broken arm, was blind in one eye, and had severe arthritis. He lived to about 40 years old. He couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, but his group kept him alive anyway. This is what separated us. We didn't just cooperate, we cared. And we didn't just hunt in groups, we strategized. Wolves hunt in packs, but it's instinct. Humans hunt in packs with rolls. You drive the animal toward the cliff, you wait at the bottom with spears, you cut off the escape route. We used language to communicate complex plans. We threw spears from a distance, something no predator could defend against. 5 humans with spears and a plan could kill a saber-tooth. And we did. Around 400,000 years ago, the Schöningen spears were crafted in Germany. Wooden throwing spears, aerodynamic, balanced, designed to kill from 30 feet away. We stopped running, we started hunting. And then, around 50,000 years ago, something shifted. Humans migrated out of Africa into Europe, Asia, Australia, the Americas, and everywhere we went, the megafauna started disappearing. Saber-tooths went extinct 10,000 years ago. Cave lions, 14,000 years ago. Short-faced bears, 11,000 years ago. Woolly mammoths, giant sloths, terror birds, all gone. There's debate about how much humans contributed versus climate change, but the pattern is undeniable. Every continent we reached, the large predators vanished within a few thousand years. We didn't just survive them. We outlasted them, outthought them, eliminated them. Because here's the truth. Evolution gave every predator one advantage: speed, strength, venom, camouflage. But evolution gave humans adaptability. We couldn't outrun a short-faced bear, so we threw rocks at it from a distance. We couldn't outbite a cave hyena, so we worked in groups and surrounded it. We couldn't see in the dark like a cave lion, so we made fire and turned night into day. Every biological weakness forced us to invent a solution, and those solutions compounded over thousands of generations until we became something no predator could evolve to fight. For 2 million years, we were prey. We hid in trees, we ran from shadows, we lost children to leopards and couldn't do anything but grieve. But we had one thing no predator had. We could learn from our mistakes and teach the next generation not to make them. And over time, that was enough.
Atlantis, around 360 BC, Plato described a powerful, advanced island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time, placing it around 9,600 BC. Located beyond the Pillars of Hercules' modern Strait of Gibraltar, it was described as a vast, wealthy empire with glorious architecture, advanced technology, and a strong military. Atlantis was rich in resources, ruled by 10 kings descended from the god Poseidon. As the Atlanteans grew corrupt, they lost favor with the gods, and the island sank. In 1882, writer Ignatius Donnelly argued in Atlantis, the antediluvian world that ancient achievements like metallurgy, language, and agriculture must have been handed down from Atlantis because ancient peoples weren't sophisticated enough to develop these on their own. Proposed locations include Santorini, Greece, the Azores, Morocco, and the Mid-Atlantic. The scientific community has long held that a literal Atlantis never existed. Most experts conclude Plato invented it as a philosophical warning on the dangers of human pride. However, 19th century amateur scholars misinterpreted Plato's narrative as the historical tradition, and as a consequence, Atlantis has become a byword for any supposed advanced prehistoric lost civilization. The debate never died. Over 5,000 books have been written about it. Lemuria. In 1864, zoologist Philip Sclater invented Lemuria to explain why lemurs lived in Madagascar and India. He proposed a sunken continent in the Indian Ocean connecting the two landmasses, a reasonable scientific hypothesis until it was hijacked. In the 1880s, Lemuria graduated from scientific hypothesis to pseudo-scientific fact when Helena Blavatsky integrated it into her esoteric belief system. She proposed that Lemurians were the third root race of humanity. Scott Elliott, aided by a theosophist who claimed astral clairvoyance, described Lemurians as 15 feet tall, brown-skinned, flat-faced, with bird-like sideways vision. They could walk backward and forward with equal ease and reproduced with eggs. James Churchward later said Lemuria was a paradise of 64 million people, destroyed around 10,000 BC. According to him, Lemurians lived to be hundreds of years old and were capable of telepathy, astral travel, and teleportation. The continent was approximately 5,000 miles long and 3,000 miles wide. Modern geology flatly rejects it. A continent cannot simply sink, but the myth lives on through New Age spirituality worldwide. Hyperborea. In Greek mythology, Hyperborea was located so far to the north it was considered beyond the north wind itself. A legendary race of Hyperboreans lived there, worshipping the sun god Apollo. It was thought of as an earthly paradise of eternal youth and abundance, so inaccessible that only semi-divine heroes like Hercules could visit. Pindar, writing around 500 BC, described Hyperborea as a place where the muse never stopped singing, where people lived free from sickness and old age. Roman author Pliny the Elder described them as a real civilization, enjoying a perfect climate and 6 months of continuous daylight. Hyperborea was a theocracy ruled by 3 giant priest-kings called the Boreads. Their capital contained a circular temple dedicated to Apollo, which some scholars have controversially identified as Stonehenge. Blavatsky, René Guénon, and Julius Evola all shared the belief in Hyperborea as the polar origin of humankind, arguing humanity doesn't rise from apes but progressively devolves as it strays from its northern spiritual homeland. Alternative historians today link Hyperborea to anomalous megalithic structures found in the Russian Arctic. Continent of Mu. James Churchward claimed he discovered ancient tablets written by a race called the Na-a-Kal while visiting a temple in India. They revealed Mu, a paradise of 64 million citizens destroyed around 10,000 BC. Mu, he said, stretched north of Hawaii to the Fijis and Easter Island and was the original habitat of man. According to Churchward, all of the world's ancient civilizations, including the Egyptians, Inca, Indians, Babylonians, and Persians, came from Mu. The continent survived catastrophic volcanic eruptions because it was made primarily of granite. Churchward repurposed the myth of Lemuria, renaming it Mu and placing it in the Pacific Ocean. Between 1926 and 1935, he published 5 books on the subject. Proposed surviving remnants include Nan Madol, Micronesia, Easter Island, and the Yonaguni Monument, Japan. Churchward and others also tied Mu to the Bible, citing it as the Garden of Eden, and claiming the Na-Kal played a role in birthing great biblical figures like Moses. Geologists reject it entirely. The Pacific seafloor shows no evidence of a sunken continent, but Churchward's books influenced generations of alternative historians. The Anunnaki civilization. About 500,000 Sumerian clay tablets have been found. Through these tablets, the Sumerians provided a detailed version of humankind's early history, including a creation story with striking similarities to the Bible. Virtually every story in Genesis, researchers argue, originates in ancient Sumer. In 1976, scholar Zecharia Sitchin published The 12th Planet after 30 years studying Sumerian cuneiform. He claimed the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru with an elongated 3,600-year orbit. Around 500,000 years ago, they landed on Earth, seeking gold to repair their planet's atmosphere. According to Sitchin, Enki suggested creating primitive workers by crossing extraterrestrial genes with Homo erectus to replace Anunnaki laborers who had mutinied over working conditions, giving rise to Homo sapiens. The Anunnaki then gave humans the ability to write, solve math, and plan cities. Sitchin's books sold millions of copies worldwide, translated into more than 25 languages, and though scientists and Sumerologists have resoundingly rejected his work as pseudoscience. The pre-Adamites. Elongated skulls have been found on every inhabited continent in Paracas, Peru, Malta, Crimea, Egypt, Bolivia, and Mexico. The Paracas skulls, discovered in 1928 by archaeologist Julio Tello, are the most controversial. Some are 25 to 60% larger in volume than a normal human skull, and the parietal plate, a bone present in all humans, appears to be missing or fused differently. Some scientists speculate about an ancient race that has long since died out. Many of these sites have elaborate structures and display a level of technology scientists say was not possible at the time they would have been in use. In 2014, researcher Brian Forster sent Paracas skull samples for DNA testing. The lab reportedly found mitochondrial DNA with mutations unknown in any human, primate, or other animal. The results have never been independently verified or published in peer-reviewed journals. Mainstream anthropologists attribute elongated skulls entirely to deliberate head binding practiced on infants, a known custom in dozens of ancient cultures. The alien race theory, however, remains one of the most viral alternative history topics online. The Antarctic frozen civilization. In 1946, the U.S. Navy launched Operation High Jump, 13 ships, 33 aircraft, and 4,700 personnel to Antarctica under Admiral Richard Byrd. The official mission was scientific. The actual findings were classified for decades. Byrd's own diary entries, disputed for authenticity, describe encountering a warm, inhabited land beneath the ice. A flash-frozen civilization in Antarctica has been of particular interest to researchers. Skeletons found there looked vaguely human, except for elongated skulls. Scientists speculate about an ancient race that has long since died out, while conspiracy theorists believe they are an alien race that came to escape their dying planet. A 2016 satellite image leak appeared to show pyramid-like structures in the Antarctic mountains. Geologists explain them as natural pyramid peaks, shaped by erosion. The theory is bolstered by the Pyre Race map 1513, which appears to accurately depict Antarctica's coastline without ice, as centuries before the continent was officially discovered in 1820. The Theosophical Root Races. Helena Blavatsky outlines 7 root races representing different stages of human development. The first, the Polarians, were ethereal, non-physical beings that reproduced asexually like amoebas. The second, the Hyperboreans, lived at the North Pole, then tropical, and reproduced through sweat. The Lemurians were the third race, 4-armed hermaphrodites who laid eggs and lived alongside dinosaurs, originally with one eye. The Atlanteans were the fourth race, the first to develop speech, with language forming the basis of Sanskrit. Blavatsky claimed to have received this history from the Book of Zion, an ancient manuscript shown to her by survivors of Atlantis, a claim no scholar has been able to verify. Blavatsky's Lemurians were semi-ethereal, towering, telepathic, and androgynous. They lived millions of years ago and were ultimately destroyed due to moral and psychic decline, a recurring theme in ancient myths. Despite total rejection by mainstream science, the Theosophical Society, founded in New York in 1875, attracted figures like Thomas Edison, William Butler Yeats, and Mahatma Gandhi as sympathizers. The framework directly influenced Nazi Aryan mythology, such as one of history's darkest misappropriations of speculative history. The Silurian Hypothesis. This is the only entry on this list with peer-reviewed academic credentials, and it's haunting. The hypothesis was presented in a 2018 paper by Adam Frank, an astrophysicist at the University of Rochester, and Gavin Schmidt, director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. They imagined the existence of an advanced civilization before humans and asked whether it would be possible to detect an industrial civilization in the geological record. They argued that finding direct evidence such as technological artifacts would be unlikely because of the rarity of fossilization and Earth's exposed surface. Instead, researchers might find only indirect evidence such as climate changes, anomalies in sediment, or traces of nuclear waste. They also speculated that artifacts from past civilizations might be found on the Moon and Mars, where erosion and tectonic activity would be less likely to erase evidence. The paper is not a claim that such a civilization existed. It's a question about detectability, but the implication is unsettling. If a technologically advanced species existed 60 million years ago, we might have zero way of knowing. Earth recycles its surface. The geological record is incomplete. History, it turns out, has a very short memory. The atoms before Adam. This theory doesn't come from conspiracy theorists, and it comes from classical Islamic scholarship, written 1,000 years before modern alternative history was a genre. Some Islamic scholars explain that Adam was not the first human created on Earth. They hold that hundreds of thousands of Adams existed before our Adam, each with their own descendants and civilizations, each completely destroyed and replaced by the next. Our Adam is considered the final cycle in this long series of human iterations on Earth. This perspective is documented in Al-Maqdisi's Al-Bad wa Al-Tariq and Ibn al-Arabi's Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, demonstrating that Islamic scholars were debating pre-human civilizations 10 centuries before Darwin sparked similar debates in Europe. The Quran itself hints at this. When God said he would place a Khalifa, steward on Earth, the angels responded by asking why, when implying they had seen previous inhabitants cause destruction there. For many Islamic thinkers, this verse is direct textual evidence that Earth had prior civilizations long before Adam and Eve descended.
Christian apocalypse is based on the Book of Revelation in the Bible. The events start with Jesus opening 7 wax seals on a scroll held in God's hand, because he alone is worthy to unleash God's plan for the world's end. The first 4 seals unleash the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. One on the white horse is sent to take over the world. The others bring war, famine, and death, killing a fourth of humanity. Many believe this mirrors the events of World War I. When Jesus opens the 5th seal, it shows the souls of people killed for believing in God. They get white robes as a reward and are told to hold on for a while. The 6th seal causes a worldwide earthquake, blackens the sun, turns the moon to blood, and causes stars to fall. The 7th seal unleashes new disasters with 7 trumpets blown by angels. Hail, fire, and dark skies wreak havoc like a global nuclear holocaust. Then, demons are released from the abyss, strange locust-like beings that torment humans. After that, 4 fallen angels kill a third of what's left of humanity by leading a massive 200 million person army. When the last trumpet blows, God says that Christ now rules the earth. Then Satan appears in the form of a dragon, tries to attack the heavens but is cast down by Archangel Michael. Satan lands on Earth and starts a campaign of world domination, empowering 2 beasts. The first beast, often interpreted as the Antichrist, rises from the sea, has 7 heads and 10 crowned horns. People see it as a savior and worship it. The second beast is the false prophet, performing satanic miracles and enforcing global worship through a mark placed on the right hand or forehead. Then, angels pour out 7 bowls on earth, bringing plagues, blood-red seas and rivers, scorching heat, darkness, and a huge earthquake that flattens everything. Jesus returns with an army of believers to defeat the forces of Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. Jesus wins, Satan is locked in a bottomless pit, and Christ rules earth for 1,000 years. After this, Satan is released, leads one last rebellion, and is destroyed by fire. Then comes the final judgment. Those who rejected Christ go to the lake of fire, while believers get eternal life. In Islamic eschatology, the end of the world is a divine promise, willed and known only by God. This end, known as the Day of Resurrection, is a singular, linear event. It starts with warning signs, including the advent and death of Prophet Muhammad, conquest of Jerusalem, and plagues like the one at Emmaus. Moral corruption, the prevalence of adultery, usury, alcohol, and wars follow. Eventually, the major signs begin. The rise of the Dajjal, a miracle-working deceiver who will mislead and kill many. The tribes Gog and Magog, imprisoned entities of destruction, will be unleashed to wreak havoc across the earth. To save believers, the Mahdi, said to be a descendant of Muhammad, will appear, and Jesus, known in Islam as Isa, will make a second coming to assist him. Together, they defeat evil and restore order. Then come the final signs. The sun will rise in the west, a huge smoke will cover the earth, and a gentle wind will bring a peaceful death to all true believers, sparing them from the terrifying end of the world. Then, a trumpet blast will shake the universe, mountains will crumble, the sun and stars will go dark, the heavens will split, and the seas will boil. The second blast annihilates all life, including the angel of death, leaving only God. After this, the dead will rise from their graves, ushering in the day of reckoning. Every soul will be judged by the sum of its deeds and intentions. Justice will prevail, but mercy remains God's sovereign choice. The righteous will be welcomed into Jannah, the paradise, while the wicked will be cast into Jahannam. Between them lies the bridge of Sirat, stretched over the fires of hell. For the righteous, it is wide and walkable. For sinners, it becomes thinner than hair and sharper than a blade. Many will fall. The few who cross will find eternal peace. In ancient Egyptian belief, the end of the world was seen more as a threat to be warded off than an inevitable fate. However, some texts hint that after countless cycles of renewal, the world may one day dissolve. The creator god Atum wants to return everything to the primeval waters of chaos, undoing the ordered world. When this happens, all things will cease to exist, except Atum himself and Osiris, the god of rebirth, who now also resides in these waters. In Hindu eschatology, time is cyclical, not linear. The universe endlessly cycles through creation, decay, and rebirth. Each cycle spans 4.3 billion years and contains 1,000 smaller cycles, each comprising 4 ages. We currently live in Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, which began when major deity Krishna left the earth in 3102 BC. This age is defined by a steady collapse of cosmic order. Truthfulness, compassion and virtue fade. Violence, greed, hypocrisy and false religion dominate. Human lifespans shrink, morality decays, and the world plunges into spiritual chaos. In this age, wealth becomes virtue, lust replaces love, and ritual replaces true spirituality. This age is ruled by the demon Kali, and at its darkest point, the god Vishnu is prophesied to incarnate as Kalki, the final avatar. Riding a white horse and wielding a blazing sword, Kalki will lead a divine purge, destroying evil and restoring cosmic order. Once evil is purged, humanity will begin anew, purified, and the golden age will return. The 4 ages will cycle again, endlessly, until Brahma's day ends. The universe dissolves into singularity and is reborn. In Norse mythology, the end of the world is foretold as Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. It begins with Fimbulvetur, a brutal, unending winter lasting 3 years, plunging Midgard into darkness and despair. Civilization collapses, the sun and moon vanish, poison fills the sky, and the dead rise. This chaos releases Loki and the monstrous wolf Fenrir. They lead the forces of destruction, fire giants, Jötnar and beasts, against the gods who are led by Odin and supported by the Aesir, Vanir and the heroic dead, the Einherja. A battle erupts and Odin is eaten by Fenrir, who is then slain by Odin's son Vidar. Thor kills the world serpent Jörmungandr, but dies after taking 9 steps. Freyr loses to the fire giant Surtur, who unleashes flames across the 9 realms, burning everything. The sky darkens, stars vanish, the earth sinks into the sea, and all is consumed by fire and water. Then the world is reborn, green, fertile, and calm. Odin's son Balder returns from death, and 2 human survivors, Leif and Lifthrasir, repopulate the earth. The Zoroastrian end of the world centers on Frasho Kereti, the final renewal, in which creation is restored to its original perfection in unity with Ahura Mazda, the supreme god. The world was tainted by evil and will reach its end marked by cosmic decay. The sun fades, the land turns barren, it rains noxious creatures, and society collapses into moral corruption. Then, a final cosmic battle erupts between good and evil, ending in the victory of good. On Earth, the savior Seoshat resurrects the dead, followed by a last judgment. A river of molten metal flows across the world. The righteous experience it as warm milk, but the wicked are scorched. This river descends to hell, destroying Angra Mainyu and eradicating evil forever. Ahura Mazda then conducts a final ritual, with the sacred Haoma plant granting immortality to the righteous. Humanity is transformed without hunger, pain, or violence, and bodies made of light. All people become one unified nation, speaking a single language, devoted eternally to glorifying the divine. Buddhist eschatology doesn't describe one single final end of the world, but instead envisions cycles of decay and renewal. Central to Mahayana traditions is the prophecy of Maitreya, the future and 5th Buddha of this current age, who will appear during a time when the teachings of Buddha have faded and society is gripped by greed, violence, and moral collapse. In this age of spiritual ruin, Maitreya will descend, attain Buddhahood, and restore order, establishing an earthly paradise known as Ketumati. And then there's the Sermon of the Seven Sons, found in the Pali Canon, where the Buddha describes the Earth's eventual destruction. Over unimaginable spans of time, 7 suns will successively appear, each triggering escalating devastation. Vegetation will vanish, rivers and lakes will dry, and the oceans will evaporate. And the earth itself will be scorched into flame. In the final phase, mountains melt, the world burns to a cinder, and only those who have realized the path are spared. Maitreya's restoration and the sermon's fire-driven end coexist in Buddhist thought as part of the vast, ongoing cyclic change. Aztec Apocalypse. In the Aztec mythology, the world has gone through 5 great ages, or 5 suns, each ending in destruction and rebirth. In each age, a different sun ruled, created through the sacrifice of a god, and each was destroyed by a different disaster: jaguars, hurricanes, fire, and floods. In the current 5th sun, the gods chose Nanahuatzin, a humble deity, to sacrifice himself by jumping into a big fire and becoming the new sun after the proud Tecosistical hesitated. Tecosistical eventually jumped in too, becoming the moon. According to Aztec belief, current humans live in this fragile world. If the gods become displeased again, it is foretold that a massive earthquake will tear the earth apart, swallowing the sun. Then, the star demon Tsitsimime will descend to kill all remaining humans and take over the earth. In Gnostic eschatology, the end begins with cosmic upheaval. The sun and moon darken, stars drift off course, kings wage war, and thunder shakes the earth. The corrupt archons, lesser gods who created the flawed material world we live in, lose control. Then Sophia, a spark from the supreme god Monad, will send a great thunder, which casts the corrupted gods into the abyss, where they turn on each other until only their leader, Yaldabaoth, remains, and he self-destructs. The heavens of the archons collapse, and the earth is drawn into the abyss. Darkness is consumed by light, which then transforms into something far greater than anything known. Then all beings are judged by their deeds and spiritual knowledge. Those who reach spiritual perfection move beyond all worlds and enter a place without boundaries. Others, who are less perfected, will still find peace in eternal realms. The flawed world ends, but true existence begins. Jewish apocalypse. In Judaism, the end of the world is envisioned not as a single apocalyptic moment, but as a transformative period called the end of days. God will bring the Jewish people back to Israel from all over the world, rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and restore the house of David through a divinely appointed ruler, the Messiah, who will usher in a messianic age of peace, justice, and recognition of the God of Israel. The hordes of Gog and Magog will attack Jerusalem, but God wipes them out with earthquakes, torrential rains, hailstones, and fire. Then God will resurrect the dead, and a new heaven and earth will be established. In Hopi mythology, we are living in the 4th world, a world that, like the 3 before it, will eventually end because humans stray from spiritual values. The 1st world ended in fire, the 2nd in ice, and the 3rd in a great flood. The 4th is said to be nearing its end due to greed, moral decline, environmental disrespect, and the misuse of technology. Prophecies of the Native American Hopi warn that when people ignore the earth and the Creator's teachings, the balance of the world will be broken. They mention signs for that: the arrival of pale-skinned people, wooden carts, steel snakes, and a vast web, all believed to refer to European settlers, trains, and electricity. Eventually, Pahana, the lost white brother, will return and cleanse evil, making way for the 5th world, an era of peace, spiritual awakening, and restored harmony with nature. In Incan cosmology, time is cyclical, and major shifts are marked by events called Pachacuti, meaning world reversal or time upheaval. These events signal destruction followed by renewal. The creator god Varacocha is central to this belief. He first created giants who became disobedient, prompting him to unleash a catastrophic flood to wipe them out. After the flood, Viracocha created a new humanity from smaller stones. The Incas believed that neglecting rituals and disrespecting the gods could trigger another Pachacuti. Signs of this upheaval included the sun weakening, crop failures, and earthquakes, seen as messages from Pachamama, the Earth Mother. If a Pachacuti occurred, Viracocha would return to destroy and then restore order. Those who stayed devoted to traditional ways would help usher in a new era of peace and prosperity. Pachacuti represents a cyclical transition, where one world is replaced by another as part of a cleansing and renewal, rather than an absolute end. Manichaean Apocalypse. In Manichaeism, a former world religion from ancient Iran, the universe is shaped by an eternal struggle between two forces: light, ruled by the Father of Greatness, and darkness, ruled by the Prince of Darkness. Here, the world was born from their collision, becoming a battlefield where these forces are now mixed. We live in the time of mixture, and fragments of divine light are trapped in physical matter, especially in human souls. Eventually, the end begins with a final cosmic war. Forces of light rise to defeat darkness, leading to the judgment of souls, a heavenly battle among divine beings, and the collapse of the material world. Then, Jesus the Splendor, the God of salvation, appears, sent by the Father of Greatness to awaken souls, and the righteous are separated from the wicked. The world is then engulfed by a purifying fire, freeing the last remnants of light and sealing darkness forever. Time itself ends, restoring eternal order. Rastafari concept. Rastafarians see the end times through the Bible, especially Revelation. They view Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I as God incarnate, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords prophesied in Revelation. His crowning is seen as the second coming of Christ, and the Second Italo-Ethiopian War is believed to fulfill part of this prophecy. Rastafari also believe that Selassie will return for a final judgment and gather the lost children of Israel, referring to those taken from Africa through the slave trade. This will lead to an era of peace and harmony at Mount Zion in Africa. The Camp of the Saints is a 1973 French novel by Jean Raspail. The title refers to a passage from the Book of Revelation about Satan gathering nations for a final battle, which the book uses as an analogy for mass migration. The story imagines a future where a massive group of Indian refugees hijack ships, form an armada, and sail toward France, ultimately destroying Western civilization. The migrants are mainly described in dehumanizing terms like the Horde or the enemy, and their leader is known as the Turd Eater. As the armada nears France, global unrest spreads, including riots in New York City by African Americans and an invasion of Chinese peasants into Siberia. The armada is framed as a threat to predominantly white nations. The novel portrays the media as corrupted by capitalists promoting left-wing ideas and presents racism among white characters as natural and justified. The book has been widely criticized as racist, xenophobic, nativist, and extreme in its anti-immigration stance. Despite this, it apparently has been popular in far-right circles and praised by figures.
Turn around when it is safe to do so. yards, turn sharp right. Turn sharp right. In 400 yards, turn left. Turn left. Turn around when it is safe to do so. In 100 yards, turn sharp left. Calculating route. In 400 yards, turn sharp right. Turn around when it is safe to do so. Sharp right. Turn around when it is safe to do so.
Got covered.
Welcome back, Reggie.
Oh God, that was bad.
Figures like White House strategist Steve Bannon and politician Marine Le Pen. The book has often faced limited availability or suppression and was completely out of print until recently. A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind is a 2014 book by South African banker Stephen Goodson. It presents a historical story that argues a hidden war over money creation has enslaved mankind for thousands of years. Goodson argues that usury, described as private banks creating a nation's money and lending it at unreasonably high interest, allows bankers to gain wealth without producing value. Goodson claims central banking originated as a system used by powerful financial interests to control governments, instigate wars for profit, and remove regimes that resisted their control over money. The narrative begins in ancient Rome, where Rome's prosperity is tied to state-issued money, and its decline to privately controlled money, which he says caused debt and inequality. Julius Caesar is portrayed as a reformer who tried to return money creation to the state, with his assassination presented as a response to these reforms threatening wealthy elites. The book then shifts to England, arguing that the founding of the Bank of England in 1694 created the modern model of private central banking and introduced permanent national debt. Napoleon Bonaparte is cited as an example of resistance, using a state-controlled bank to fund public projects with debt-free money. Similar claims are made about Tsarist Russia, which is described as experiencing rapid industrial growth, low taxes and no debt due to a state bank independent of international bankers. The narrative continues in the United States, where Thomas Jefferson is quoted warning that private banks threaten liberty more than a foreign army, and Andrew Jackson is presented as opposing central banking. The book also links the assassinations of Abraham Lincoln and James Garfield to their challenges to private bankers and concludes that the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 marked the final victory of private central banking. The Myth of the 20th Century is a 1930 book by Nazi ideologue Alfred Rosenberg, in which he lays out his racial worldview. Rosenberg focuses on the Aryan race, which he equates mainly with Nordic Europeans like Anglo-Saxons, Germanic peoples, Balts, Baltic Finns, Northern French and Celts. But he extends it to the Berbers in North Africa and elites of ancient Egypt. He argued that the migrating Aryan race founded the world's great civilizations, like ancient pre-Islamic Persia, Greece, India, and Rome. He claims these civilizations declined due to the interbreeding with what he calls lesser races. The book portrays Aryans as the highest form of humanity and blames Jews for moral, cultural, and social decline. Rosenberg argues that the state must enforce racial hierarchy and prevent racial mixing. Rosenberg also claims Jesus was partly Aryan and emphasizes anti-Judaic teachings of early Christian Marcionism and Persian Manichaeanism as representing a true Jesus, compatible with a Nordic worldview. He also condemns Islam as anti-Christian, anti-European, and spiritually inferior. The book sold over 1 million copies by 1944. In 1934, the Vatican banned the book by placing it on the list of forbidden books for its attacks on Christianity. After World War II, it became restricted or banned in Germany, and it's classified as restricted material not allowed for public display. The book has also been removed from major platforms such as Amazon in the US and UK. The Manipulated Man is a 1971 book by Esther Villa, originally written in German. It argues that in industrialized societies, women are not oppressed but instead exploit men. Villa claims men have been conditioned and trained by women to serve them, like Pavlov did with his dogs. She argues that men are rewarded with intercourse in exchange for labor and compliance. The book says women are gold diggers who extract money and material benefits from men, using selective praise to influence them. Villa argues that women regulate their emotions more effectively than men, and deliberately exaggerate emotional reactions to emotionally blackmail men. Marriage is described as offering no benefit to men, with women portrayed as coercing them into it. Feminism is framed as a system that reinforces this dynamic while presenting men as oppressors. The book sold well and attracted major attention but also intense backlash. In 1975, Villa debated feminist Alice Schwarzer, who called Villa sexist and fascist, and compared her book to the Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer. The author reported receiving death threats, and the book was widely protested by feminists. In 2021, the book was briefly banned from Amazon. The English edition has often been difficult to find and frequently goes out of print. Some say the book is suppressed for its anti-feminist stance. Others say its scarcity is explained by its age. Behold a Pale Horse is a 1991 book by former US Naval Intelligence member Milton William Cooper. It presents a collection of claims about secret government activity and hidden control over global events. Cooper argues that a covert transnational government has concealed the existence of extraterrestrial life since the 1940s. He claims President John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he intended to expose information about UFOs. The book also states that HIV was artificially created and deliberately spread. Science is portrayed as a means to an end, where the means is knowledge and the end is control. The text also promotes the idea of a coming New World Order, Order, a global totalitarian system run by the Illuminati, which Cooper claims has declared war on the American people. Cooper's book soon became associated with extremist movements and was called a militia manifesto. It's frequently cited
when I was still tiny, but he told me all sorts of stories about this car. He poured so much passion into every inch of this thing.
You can see how well he looked after this car, May. Even from the paint scheme alone, everything is high quality, down to all the details of a classic American lowrider.
He had a group of friends in the 80s, all into the same lowrider custom builds. They'd curate their cars for shows and meets, showcasing their latest upgrades.
I assume he had heavily lowered the chassis. Unfortunately, here it sunk down to the floor over time. But look at that interior. I'll be extra careful with this repair, May.
Thanks, Yuji. I think finding this car, fixing it up, and breathing life into it once more will be my greatest show of appreciation to him. The car's back at Yuji's now. I'll give you a call once he's worked his magic.
Welcome back, Reggie. Welcome back, Reggie.
Dad's Lincoln Continental? Yuji finished it. My father couldn't believe we tracked it down. It's in your garage.
Welcome back, Reggie.
Thanks for finding it. This has really meant a lot to me.
Welcome back, Reggie. Welcome back, Reggie.
Great work. The next Horizon Rush event is ready to take off. Well, once they've finished fueling the rocket.
Ready for the Horizon Rush? Not sure how you prepare for a huge stunt course around a giant rocket. Do you think it'll take off? I guess we'll find out.
Turn left. Yards. Turn left. Turn left. In 100 yards, turn right. In 100 yards, turn right.
Now that was ridiculous. Ridiculously good, of course. Wow.
A purple wristband is no simple task. You're pushing towards the elite, and reaching this event will see you into legend status. These events are curated for the best of the best. Complete these, and your legend event will be waiting for you. Step closer to Legend Island. I'm sure I'll see you there.
Welcome back, Reggie. arrived at your destination.
The best starts use launch control, by the way. Hold the handbrake, some people call it the e-brake, I know. Get your revs up, and on green, release the handbrake and go.
Arrived at your destination. Arrived at your destination.
You can hit a drag meet in a convoy, by the way. We all get thrown into a leaderboard together. To see who's the best, of course.
Arrived at your destination.
had that happen a few times, and it will probably happen a few more. Dust yourself off, head back up, give it another shot.